About 100 years ago, in the early 20th century, an unprecedented event occurred where an entire continent was controlled by just 7 European countries. The continent subjected to European rule was Africa. The African continent, rich in natural resources, was highly coveted by European nations, which had begun large-scale factory production following the Industrial Revolution. During this period, most regions of Africa became European colonies and came under political and economic control. The reason why African borders are drawn so straight is that European countries arbitrarily drew lines based on latitudes and longitudes on maps. However, while almost all of Africa fell under European control, one country remained uncolonized: Ethiopia, located in the northeastern part of the African continent. Why was Ethiopia the only African country not colonized by Europe? Let's take a look back at its history. Hello everyone, my name is Kanta. On my channel, I have frequently covered the history of Africa, and one of the major negative impacts on modern Africa is European colonial rule that took place from the 19th to the 20th century. In the first part of the video uploaded recently, I explained 3 reasons why Africa was unable to resist European domination. While most regions of Africa succumbed to European invasion, there were 2 countries that were never colonized: Ethiopia and Liberia. However, since Liberia was founded by freed black slaves from the United States and effectively functioned as an American protectorate, Ethiopia is generally considered the only African country that was never colonized by a European power. This video is part 2. I will explain why Ethiopia did not become a European colony. Why was Ethiopia the only African country not colonized by Europe? The first reason is Ethiopia's geographical features, or in other words, natural barriers. The Ethiopian highlands are characterized by high altitudes and significant rainfall. The heavy rain causes severe erosion, resulting in deep valleys and cliffs. This rugged terrain served as a natural defense against foreign invaders, contributing to Ethiopia's ability to resist colonization. Additionally, the average altitude of the Ethiopian highlands is about 2,300 meters. In contrast, over half of Europe consists of lowlands with altitudes below 200 meters. The European soldiers, accustomed to the lowlands of their own countries, found it difficult to adapt to the Ethiopian environment. This difficulty in adaptation is considered one of the reasons that made European invasion challenging. Another significant reason was the presence of visionary and strong leaders who were determined to protect Ethiopia's independence. Emperor Menelik II, who ascended to the throne in 1889, focused on strengthening the nation's power to ensure Ethiopia would not become a European colony. He promoted the modernization of Ethiopia by constructing the capital Addis Ababa, introducing a banking system, and rapidly developing railways and roads. Among these efforts, Menelik II devoted the most attention to modernizing the military. Ethiopia's standing army exceeded 90,000 soldiers and was equipped with modern arms, including rifles, machine guns, and artillery. At that time, Ethiopia was in a state of turmoil, with powerful local nobles across the country competing for wealth and power, similar to a period of warring states. Menelik II himself was a noble from the central Ethiopian region of Shewa. With the support of the Italian army, he defeated his domestic rivals and ascended to the throne as Emperor of Ethiopia. Shortly after Menelik II became Emperor of Ethiopia, the Treaty of Wuchale was signed with Italy. Under the Treaty of Wuchale, Ethiopia ceded part of its territory to Italy in exchange for economic support and military aid from Italy. However, the content of the treaty, specifically the diplomatic terms in Article 17, later became the cause of war between Italy and Ethiopia. This was because the wording in the Italian version of the treaty differed from that in the Ethiopian Amharic version. To simplify the details, the Italian version of the treaty stipulated that Ethiopia would conduct all its foreign affairs through Italy, effectively making it a protectorate and giving Italy control over much of Ethiopia's sovereignty, including its diplomatic rights. In contrast, the Amharic version was much milder, granting Ethiopia significant autonomy and allowing it to negotiate with third countries through Italy if it chose to. This discrepancy is believed to have been caused by a translation error when the treaty was translated between Italian and Amharic. Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia protested to Italy, but the Italians refused to accept his protest. Enraged, Menelik II declared the treaty null and void, leading to the outbreak of war between Italy and Ethiopia. This was the First Italo-Ethiopian War. Initially, the Italians believed they would easily defeat Ethiopia. They underestimated Ethiopia, assuming that the Ethiopians would fight with outdated equipment such as spears and shields. However, in the First Italo-Ethiopian War, the Italians' biggest miscalculation was underestimating Ethiopia's military capabilities. Over the years, the Ethiopian army had acquired modern equipment. Why was Ethiopia able to acquire modern weapons? This was because they had purchased a vast amount of firearms, artillery, and other weaponry from France, which was concerned about the expansion of Italian influence. In other words, Menelik II cleverly allied with France, the enemy of their enemy, enabling the Ethiopian army to acquire modern equipment. Menelik II navigated the complex arena of international politics and diplomacy with great skill. In 1896, a historic event decisively secured Ethiopia's independence, the Battle of Adwa, in which Ethiopia achieved a major victory over Italy. In this battle, the Italian forces numbered about 15,000, while the Ethiopian army boasted 120,000 troops. Utilizing modern weapons acquired from France and taking advantage of Ethiopia's complex terrain, the Ethiopians achieved a decisive victory over the Italians. Ethiopia's victory at the Battle of Adwa stunned the European powers, leading to the recognition of Ethiopia's complete independence. While other African nations experienced cultural changes or losses due to colonial rule, Ethiopia's resistance to European colonization allowed it to maintain its unique culture and traditions relatively intact. In this way, Ethiopia managed to escape European colonial rule. We would like to say that it lived happily ever after, but did Ethiopia truly become a peaceful nation after that? From here, let's quickly review the history of Ethiopia up to the present day. After Menelik II stepped down as emperor and a period of rule by a queen, Haile Selassie I ascended to the throne in Ethiopia. Haile Selassie I served as emperor until 1974. Although Ethiopia had avoided European colonization after its victory over Italy at the Battle of Adwa, it temporarily became an Italian colony later on. 5 years after Haile Selassie I became emperor, Italy, led by Mussolini, invaded Ethiopia again between 1935 and 1936, leading to the outbreak of the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. Ultimately, Italy occupied Ethiopia, and Haile Selassie I went into exile. Ethiopia became part of Italian East Africa. Italian rule continued for about 5 years. However, after the start of World War II, the Allied forces invaded, and on May 24, 1941, the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, fell. Ethiopia was liberated from Italian control. Haile Selassie I, who had been in exile, returned to the country and resumed his position in Ethiopian politics. Haile Selassie I continued to hold power in Ethiopia until he was deposed in 1974. However, during the reign of Haile Selassie I, economic inequality arose due to the oppression by those in power, leading to growing discontent within the country. By around 1974, widespread protests erupted due to food shortages caused by drought and rising prices. Workers, citizens, and students who had been discontented for some time took to the streets. Soldiers from various parts of Ethiopia joined the protests, leading to a revolution. After overthrowing Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia began to transition into a socialist state with military support from the Soviet Union and Cuba. During this period, while major industries were nationalized, the government also suppressed opposition forces through military means, turning Ethiopia into a military dictatorship. Throughout this time, various factions across Ethiopia continued to harbor discontent. By the late 1980s, the collapse of the Soviet Union, which had been leading the socialist forces, began. As a result, Ethiopia's regime, which could no longer receive support from the Soviet Union, rapidly lost power. Seeing this, anti-government forces across Ethiopia rose up, leading to a civil war with the Ethiopian government forces. Ultimately, the anti-government forces triumphed, and a new regime was established. Following this, Eritrea, with a population of about 2 million, gained independence from Ethiopia. However, Ethiopia, having lost its access to the sea due to Eritrea's independence, experienced rising discontent. Additionally, disputes over the border between Eritrea and Ethiopia caused conflict between the two countries. The intense fighting, which included bombing each other's capitals, resulted in over 100,000 casualties. Although a ceasefire agreement was reached in 2000, small-scale conflicts between Eritrea and Ethiopia continued afterwards. Finally, in 2018, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy visited Eritrea, and the two countries normalized their diplomatic relations. Prime Minister Abiy was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for ending the conflict with Eritrea. However, even today, ethnic tensions and conflicts within Ethiopia are frequently a cause for concern. 1 year after Prime Minister Abiy received the Nobel Peace Prize, tensions between the Ethiopian central government and the Tigray minority, which had previously led the government, escalated into armed conflict. Both sides blame each other for the violence, which has resulted in numerous casualties. Despite receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, Prime Minister Abiy has made statements that appear to incite violence, calling for national mobilization after the outbreak of the civil war. This has prompted strong criticism from the international community, with some saying that awarding him the Nobel Peace Prize was a mistake. Although a ceasefire agreement was reached between the Ethiopian government and the rebel forces in November 2022, the civil war has not completely ended. Furthermore, conflicts are not the only issue plaguing Ethiopia in recent years. The effects of climate change, such as severe droughts, have worsened, and many citizens are facing food shortages and hunger. We have quickly reviewed the modern history of Ethiopia towards the end of this video. What are your thoughts? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Kanta's channel explains various issues in the world that are difficult to learn about through other channels. It is important not to be interested, but to stay interested. Please subscribe to my channel to stay interested. Thank you again for watching this video to the end. See you again in the next video.